I see him as my academic head, so to say, from the student point of view. And there I was as a student governor trying to challenge him on a very big issue of finance. It was really big, it was really hot. And how would, I think, what sort of advice would you give so that I think probably in a polite way I'm able to challenge him firmly, but I think still sticking to recognize that outside the boardroom he might hope, maybe might,
Okay.
you know, sort of to protect myself also as a student.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the first question. And then the question I have, the second question I have is on the role of governance, student governance. Do you think that this role might continue? Because in my reading, I also read that there are some people who are against having staff and student governance all together. And even within our board at the University of Bolton, there are some people who are very much against us being present in those board meetings because they feel that we shouldn't be there. Like there was an issue that again I raised during the first meeting, which now one of the members actually said, no, this we have to deal with it outside the boardroom because we don't want everyone else to hear about it. But frankly, he was talking about the fact that he was not comfortable with a student governor discussing such a matter in the boardroom. Okay. So it's something off the student, something that.
Okay.
So two questions.
Thank you very much. Two questions. Just in brief summary, the dilemma between being a student and challenging your Vice-Chancellor as a student and being a board member and challenging your Vice-Chancellor, and also the role of staff and student governors in the future. Will they exist? Frida, do you want to?
I'm going to respond to the first one, and I think Alan may want to pick up the second one because he's more up to date on that than I am. First of all, challenging your Vice-Chancellor. Remember that as the governing body, you employ the Vice-Chancellor. So when you're actually sitting in the governing body, as a governor, you are the employer of the Vice-Chancellor. You have a right to challenge. That's the first point to make. However, the issue, I think, is how that is done. The Vice-Chancellor expects to be challenged in a governing body. That's what they're there for. They have prepared for that. They should be able to take that totally professionally. But of course, how you deliver the challenge professionally will help the dialogue that ensues between you. The third point that I would make is be as sure as you can if you're going to issue a challenge like that you've got appropriate evidence and that you have interpreted the thing appropriately, because you don't want to be perceived as just making an error of interpretation. And the fourth thing is that if you're really unsure about that situation, it's a very good idea to get on good terms with your Vice-Chancellor if you're not already in advance of the meeting, and you could always raise it with them in advance of the meeting, rather than having a confrontation face-to-face there that they're not expecting. But I would anticipate that in most circumstances, it'll be a gentler confrontation than that, and they'll be perfectly able to take it, might even welcome it.
Okay, thank you.
Well, a quick comment on what Frida said. I mean, I absolutely agree that don't forget that as a governor, you have access to the executive outside meetings. And the vast majority, I think, of the kind of queries, particularly in relation to finance, that you might want to raise are probably best dealt with by going direct to the finance director or to the Vice-Chancellor. Because the finance discussions taking place in the board should only be about the huge policy kind of issues associated with kind of finance. And if you raise trivial issues, however well-intentioned, I mean, that's going to get up everybody's kind of nose and as being the wrong place. So choose, I agree with absolutely Frida, choose the right forum for raising those kinds of queries. And if it's a genuine board matter, then that's fine. So far as student and staff participation is concerned, it's absolutely true that there's a difference of view. There are some institutions where staff and student participation on boards is welcomed and is felt to be absolutely central to governance. There are some where it struggles. Frankly, the reason mainly why it struggles has been historic, that your predecessors have actually not contributed in the way that they perhaps could have done to get the confidence of the board. And it's no different to any other forum, maybe even no different to a sort of student executive. If you are unimpressed by the people who are sitting around the table, over time you start to to get a rather sort of negative view. So to some extent, the whole issue is in your hands. One final comment, and that is that during this year, you will probably see some legal changes to the basis on which governing bodies, particularly in post-92 institutions, operate. They're called instruments and articles. They're the regulatory documents by which you run. And a new set is just coming out. I think it is almost certain that student participation student membership of governing bodies will continue to be in the new instruments and articles. Because the government, Dias as was, Biz as now is, actually thinks student participation is important. So yes, there are tensions. On the whole, they are the outcomes of how students and staff members have contributed in the past, but I think it's likely to